Dude, this game is so good. Announced and released at the same time on January 25th, Hi-Fi Rush has been garnering praise from every player that gets their hands on it. So after Forspoken had me bored out of my mind, I decided I had to at least give it a try, and it was free for Game Pass owners anyway, so I played it for about an hour and I was just... My God, we just gotta go ahead and get into this. Hi-Fi Rush is a combo-heavy action game where you'll make your way through 14 stages of enemy encounters and platforming. Meanwhile, you'll accumulate upgrades for your health, special meter, as well as purchasing more combos. You take control of Chai, a wannabe rock star who was going in for a standard cybernetic augmentation at Vandalay Technologies. But due to some buffoonery, his MP3 player was fused into his body. Now everything he does is synced up to his own personal soundtrack. From the very steps he takes to the whole environment around him, everything is always bouncing to the beat. And this, just from a sound design enthusiast such as myself, is beyond amazing. One of my favorite movies ever is a film called Baby Driver, and there is a lot of things that Hi-Fi Rush and Baby Driver have in common. Most notably, how sound effects are synced up to specific actions, making for some of the most satisfying audio-visual sequences I've ever seen. I mean, just listen to some of these cutscenes. Oh, I can't praise the sound design enough. It's also brilliantly animated. Again, to talk about movies, I'm so grateful that Into the Spider-Verse came out and normalized the return of cartoons that look like f***ing cartoons, because now we're getting things like Puss in Boots, as well as games that look like this. Again, I shouldn't even have to point it out, but I will. It looks amazing. The fluid motions and cutscenes are dripping with style and confidence that I can't get over it. And how about the few times when it swaps from the 3D to some fantastic looking hand-drawn cinematics? This game's visuals are just untouchable, honestly. And oh my God, the characters. They are all so likable. Chai might be a little too dumb at times, but he's such a fun protagonist. I love his outfit too. I really dig the scarf and the jacket. I didn't care for the guitar weapon too much at first, but I did warm up to it. 808, the robotic cat, what a perfect companion. I'm not really a cat person, my dog will attest to that, but 808 makes me want a cat that will square up with bad guys with me. The way that they do these expressions and poses are too precious. Oh, and I legit laughed out loud when I saw this scene. Oh, and I think I might have fallen in love with Peppermint over the course of the game. It's just everything, man. The outfit, the voice, her sarcastic banter, and the fact that she's a certified ass kicker too. She's also not a one-note character. She goes through enough emotional moments to make her feel like a real person. I would kill for her. Macaron is a big teddy bear, and I would invite him to my house for dinner. Corsica makes me blush when she looks at me too. And Kale, the main villain, he's cool, but as a Sonic fan, all I can hear is that blue rodent when Roger speaks. He puts on a great performance here though. The voice casts were all directed flawlessly, and I rarely stopped smiling the entire time. And while the cinematics and how hilarious they were had a big part in that, the main reason for that smile was because of the combat. The main draw of Hi-Fi Rush's unique combat system is tied to the music. everything around Chai is synced up to the beat of the soundtrack, along with everything else in the game. Enemies' attacks are always going to come out on a specific beat, so if you watch and keep the rhythm in your head, you'll stay on top of it. You can even press the select button at any time to toggle a metronome at the bottom of the screen. It doesn't matter what it is either, everything is stuck to the beat. Basic swings of a weapon, charging projectiles, they all follow the same rules. It makes the battlefield predictable but still chaotic, which is strange but 100% a positive. But as for Chai himself, mostly all of his attacks sync up to the beat as you could imagine. Chai has a basic light attack, a basic heavy attack, he can unlock different combos that allow him to swap inputs in and out to create different results. Some are heavy hitters, more than a few act as a great way to launch enemies, but to make up for this, Chai also has access to a magnet in his arm which can take him straight to enemies, a short dash that can be chained up to 3 times if timed right on the beat, a parry that feels amazing to use because of how synced up everything is, several equipable special attacks that you can activate by clicking both sticks, and finally the assist system. As you go through the game, you'll gain access to 3 separate characters that Chai can call in for assist attacks. The left trigger will cycle through them and the right trigger will send them out to auto-target the closest enemy. Peppermint will shoot a volley of gunfire out that's great for keeping targets airborne, and by holding down the trigger, she'll fire one large laser, but her main function is to disrupt enemies with blue shields. Macaron will slam the ground with his big fist or leave a dome of energy that dazes enemies caught in it. His main function is to break the green armor that some enemies have. And finally, Corsica will send out a whirlwind that makes enemies more susceptible to damage. Or holding down the trigger will let her send out a little traveling tornado that can mess enemies up. And her main utility is to cool enemies off when they catch on fire. There are also combo finishers that can be unlocked for all 3 of the characters. They're activated by pressing the trigger on the beat of a combo finisher. Aerial and grounded versions are available for all 3. Plus, there are perfect parry call-ins that you can perform by hitting the trigger 1 beat after a perfect parry. Needless to say, keeping the beat in your head is paramount to being successful in combat. While Chai's options aren't as plentiful as something like Dante from DMC5, I think it works more than well enough. Besides the obvious grappling hook arm, Chai reminds me more of Nero than Dante. The simplicity of how they both operate is good for new players to the genre. Button mashing can yield results if players don't feel like committing combos to memory, but there's also a fair amount of tech you can pull off if you know what to do. Nero is more complex without a doubt, but Chai has his fair share of pause combos and fun combos to link up. There are a few more things you can do to augment how Chai plays, but they're merely passive. You can purchase chips which give buffs like a period of invincibility after a successful parry, lengthened hang time for launched enemies, or shorter cooldowns for the assist attacks. None of these ever really make or break encounters for me personally, but they are fun to have. They're good for making one specific part of Chai's arsenal more effective if you're so inclined. I went more with the parrying chips because I'm a nut for that kind of sadistic perfect timing. I mentioned a few videos ago that Sekiro can often feel like a rhythm game with how you have to remember and internalize enemy attack patterns for parrying, and Hi-Fi Rush takes that concept to an entirely different dimension. It's not perfect like anything in life, but when you feel yourself getting into the groove and can remember the timings, it feels amazing. But again, the game doesn't force you to play like this. If you're not the type of player to care about getting an amazing score, but still think the game looks neat, button mashing is more than effective up to a point. But if you do find yourself instinctually tapping the parry, heavy attack, dash, jump, light attack all on the correct beat, you won't want to play any other way. Just memorizing timing doesn't win battles for you though. The variety of enemies makes things more involved, like I mentioned with the assist moves. One mechanic that was tough to get a grasp on for some of the enemies is this parry rhythm challenge. So some mini-boss enemies will enter a rage mode and stop the fight completely to hit Chai with a string of attacks. It gives you the sequence and then immediately gives you the test, asking you to parry or dodge every hit, otherwise you'll have to start it over. And these enemies won't die by normal means, you will have to pass these small rhythm challenges. This is gonna sound crazy, but I think these are easier to execute without the distraction of the soundtrack. If I'm listening to the music in the background and then have to tap along to another beat, my brain gets all kinds of confused. So when I played with the music turned down just to test it out, I was having far less trouble. Even with the samurai enemies, which were my worst nightmare for the longest time, they were a lot easier to full parry with no background music in my ear. For the most part, the game is pretty easy to get through. I played on the hard difficulty for my first playthrough and had my fair share of deaths, which led to some lackluster scores, but the frustration was never there because the levels and even bosses all have really generous checkpoints throughout their phases. Now, these environments might be feast for the eyes and ears to travel through, but miraculously, that doesn't stop them from being densely packed with things to see and secrets to find. Every little back passageway is worth inspecting. It could be a deposit of gears to buy new moves, there could be a secret chest that rewards you with a health upgrade, or it could be some graffiti that will eventually make a mural at the hideout. And that's not even touching on all the cute interactions you can find involving the NPCs. Like this one little guy that needs help clearing the pigeons out of the way, or this one that wants to find a golden can. The Vandalite robots are also just entertaining to talk to. They all have something funny to say.
This robot arm is trash. It can't even do what it's supposed to. Oh, sorry. Looks like you, got one of them too.
These extra things and people to find and interact with just tickled my itch for exploration in the best possible way. Everything in this game hit me in the right way so much that I did something I don't always do. I started a second playthrough immediately after finishing my first. I went back and found all of the extra pieces of help. I found all but like 2 of the graffitis hidden around the campus because the last 2 are apparently really hard to find. I went out of my way to find all the Spectra doors and then completed the remaining 8 to get the true ending, which was really neat. And I even completed an entire extra playthrough on the new Rhythm Master difficulty, and real quick, this is where the real challenge lies. In this mode, enemies hit like trucks, but it's not really a big deal since the currency payout is massive and you can fully upgrade Chai soon after unlocking the mode. But no, the real challenge is this mode's new stipulation. If your rhythm rank falls to a D, you immediately game over. The ranking only ticks down during active battles, so platforming and exploration don't change at all, but battles can get a little more intense. With the common enemies, it's not a problem. Hitting inputs and combos on beat will build the meter up pretty efficiently. You just have to make sure you're staying on top of them and everything will be fine. I made a habit of identifying the weakest enemies during that little pre-battle animation and then hooking straight to them to get a surplus of meter for the tougher enemies later on. Momentum is the name of the game here. Where I start having a little bit of an issue is when you lose a fight. You'll start back at the exact encounter due to the generous checkpoint system like I mentioned earlier, but the problem is the meter. It begins halfway up C. Again, common enemies aren't a problem. If anything, they're helpful. Just magnet to them and build it up. But let's say you lose to something tougher, like Rekka's second phase. At the beginning of this phase, she's completely invulnerable. Hitting or even touching her leads to Chai taking damage. Therefore, there's nothing for me to hit to bring the meter up. It took me forever to realize that just throwing out attacks on beat increases the meter a little bit, but not a whole lot, so it took me a while before I was able to get to the point of the fight where I could damage Rekka again. I think my final death counter for this fight was 49 attempts, and that's not the only instance of invulnerable phases for enemies and bosses. There are moments like when Macaron has to destroy the brakes on the train. There are no enemies for a good chunk of time, so I'm stuck throwing out perfectly timed attacks so I don't completely fail the challenge. In Mimosa's fight, she traps Chai in this energy box, making him dodge hazards on the floor, but again, there's nothing to attack in this box, so you're stuck swinging at the air to keep the meter from zeroing out. Bosses like Roquefort and Kale are extremely difficult, but they don't have instances where they become invulnerable or disappear for extended periods of time. Rekka and Mimosa are good encounters in their own right, but when they're paired with the Rhythm Master difficulty, it becomes a bit messy. It's just not really fun when the fun new challenge turns it into a wild scramble. To bring up Devil May Cry again, getting through the higher difficulty isn't really an issue. The real challenge, even on the highest difficulty, isn't beating it, but beating it proficiently. And in Hi-Fi, you even have unlimited continues to try the challenge as many times as it takes to get it done. It can be done, and this S rank on my third run of Rekka stage is proof, but I'm okay with leaving it for another time. Maybe I'll do it one day, but not for a while, because what I played was more than enough by way of challenge and fulfillment for me. Even with these few annoyances, this game is absolutely f***ing brilliant. I would say I'm not trying to gas this game up, but yeah, I am. I'm calling it now. Hi-Fi Rush is a strong contender for my game of the year. I fell hard for this thing. It was such an energetic breath of fresh air after the dry farts that were Forspoken and Hogwarts Legacy. I love how every little thing has some sort of instrument or digital sound associated with it. Macaron's environmental interaction is punctuated by a bass lick. The menu sounds are all default Fruity Loop samples. The grappling points are followed by some tickety-tacks on the hi-hats. Chai hits things with a guitar, and every level puts a different audio effect on the guitar hits. It's wild that I didn't have to pay a single penny to experience this thanks to Game Pass. The fact that Peppermint now exists, part of me hopes that Hi-Fi Rush takes off as a series because I would kill to just spend more time with these characters. I love their banter, I love how fleshed out and likable all of their personalities are. Moments like the final chase through the city and everyone is pitching in to help Cinnamon fire that cannon. This is the stuff I live for, man. With the music blaring behind them, oh, it's so perfect. And that wasn't even the only time something like that happens. I love this game, guys. That's all I really have to say. If you love Devil May Cry, Sekiro, Guitar Hero, Jet Set Radio, Sunset Overdrive, Bayonetta, any of these games, I implore you, no, I'm begging you, go play Hi-Fi Rush. I really don't think you'll be disappointed at all. It's an amazing game, and I can't wait to see what else this team puts out, as long as it's not scary like their last game. But anyway, I appreciate you for watching. So thanks for stopping by, and have a great day.